The outbreak of Ebola in Zaire is spreading fear and...
The chaos in downtown Oklahoma City did indeed resemble Beirut after what...
Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
Not only in America, but all around the world, massive media conglomerates and technological leaps provide an unprecedented ease of access to televised information, and people are finding it harder and harder to look away, but who could blame them? There was a lot happening. O.J. Simpson was tried and acquitted on 2 counts of murder. Oklahoma City saw the deadliest attack of homegrown terrorism in United States history. Japan was shaken by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake. Ebola was sweeping through Africa, and there was no baseball. If only there was something to lighten the mood, or at the very least, a distraction. And there it is. For generations, one of the many sounds that elicits a guaranteed reaction. To some, a Pavlovian hunger for another crunch of salty popcorn. To others, a sip of sweet, sparkling cherry Coke. But unanimously, that's the sound that's promising us a temporary escape. The lights dim, the curtains lower to fit the dimensions of the projector, and boom! Your problems are gone for the next few hours. Delving into a good movie is one of the most popular forms of positive escapism that I indulge in, and quite frequently, may I add. I can relate to the passing of time getting lost in a good book, but personally, it doesn't compare to the sensations I feel throughout a full cinematic experience. Seeing stories played out on screen backed by various millions of dollars of budgets, the crafted embodiment of years of hard work by everyone involved, being shared to us for the price of admissions ticket, it's incredible. Since we're talking the 90s, it's fair to say that at the time my taste was a little bit more Littlefoot and Fievel, if you catch my drift. With animation, there's an even larger palette of imagination to paint the canvas of great storytelling, and among animation studios has always stood a giant mouse, that is. Disney has been a powerhouse in animation since its first release in 1937, and even typing that makes the gears in my head turn. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs released in 1937. It's baffling, and with over 80 years of experience, they've released some of the best family-friendly movies of all time. However, with 80 years of cranking out masterpieces, there are some bangers that have been left behind and pushed into the dusty toy box, left to age beyond. These films still shimmer with a glint of their era, pieces of art with undertones reflecting their specific time period. When I ask my friends and coworkers and those around me, what's your favorite Disney movie? I always get the same responses. The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, maybe Toy Story. For the longest time, I've wanted to hear someone with the same top 3 as me. Beauty and the Beast? Easy. Hear it all the time. Disney's Hercules? Almost the subject of this video, but it's a story that has been told many times, many ways. Merry Christmas. But there's one in particular I hold above the rest. One that I never hear mentioned in top 3s. And after rewatching it and researching it, A Goofy Movie is the most underrated Disney movie of all time. First and foremost, it's just a good movie. There are several scenes I still laugh at, and the conclusion makes me want to get up and dance even though I knew it was coming all along. I admittedly still chuckled out loud at the Bigfoot puppet show, and in general, everything about the movie held up for 29-year-old me. I actually completely forgot that it was a musical until I watched it again, and make note of this, we'll come back to why I feel that way in a few. Not only is this the first time Goofy gets a full-length feature, but it's also the directorial debut of Kevin Lima. You see, Kevin worked as a storyboarder and character designer for Disney for around 6-7 years until he had the confidence to get up and actually admit that he wasn't comfortable sitting around doing desk work all the time. He approached the upper executives and told them how he pursued directing for them, and they said, "We're sorry, but we're booked for the next 15 years of Disney film." They already had the teams made up. Disney is a freaking machine, but we all knew that. To Kevin's advantage, sometimes machines do fall apart. The current director of the Goof Troop movie fell out, and shortly after he got a phone call and his chance to prove himself by tackling the challenge of truly fleshing out Goofy Goof for the first time ever. Little known fact, but despite being a popular slapstick character, Walt Disney himself disliked the Goofy cartoons. He allegedly said they were stupid cartoons with gags tied together, with no larger narrative or emotional engagement, and were a step backwards to the early days of animation. Ouch, Walt. That's a pretty big fish to fry for new director Kevin Lima, and I like to think he proved him wrong. Goofy actually appeared for the first time ever in a short called Mickey's Review, where he was depicted as a rather annoying, or at least quite dim-witted audience member named Dippy Dog. It was a running gag where Goofy's obnoxious laugh that we know and love him for today disrupted the entire audience of the theater. This was released in 1932, and up until the 90s, Goofy was never given a chance to build any emotional attachment with himself or his audience. He was the go-to escapist comedy character, usually paired with characters like Donald Duck getting stuck into crazy, silly situations. In a Goofy movie, we see that lovable, gullible goofball put into complicated situations where he has to make the important decisions. Instead of just being the comic relief and falling into ice or being hit in the head with a hammer, although we still see some of that, we see empathy, paternal tenderness, even occasional attempts at playful manipulation. I guess I'll go all alone. You know what I'm talking about? All by myself.
All alone. Talk to myself. All alone.
I guess so.
A man who is learning to compromise with his teenage son expands much deeper aspects of his character. On a similar note, Quentin Tarantino is one of the most prolific directorial legends we have today, and his approach to writing is fascinating to me. He doesn't like to write a singular arc from start to finish, and many times before he said how important it is to instead write a situation, not just a story. As filmgoers, we remember specific moments in movies, not the entire piece collectively. Perhaps it's a reach to compare the two, but I think there's some semblance of Tarantino's structure written into a Goofy movie. The only music that even comes to mind at first was the On the Open Road segment towards the end of the first act when they begin their road trip and argue over which music to play. It's not only a great original song with some typical Disney cameos thrown in there, but it takes the time to voice the motives of both of our main characters. Max, our protagonist, wants nothing more than to make it to the Powerline concert so he can hold up his end of his lie and impress the girl of his dreams. But his dad sees the importance of taking time and getting away for a while, living life with no strings attached, at least for their traditional goof family vacation. In every big-budget Disney movie, it's really clear who was the protagonist and who was the antagonist, the good guys and the bad guys. In Beauty and the Beast, Belle feels trapped in her town and has the insatiable desire to explore outside of it. Gaston is trapped in his ego and wants to make Belle a part of it by any means necessary. The Lion King, Simba grows as a cub only to avenge the loss of his slain father and reclaim the territory that was promised to him from his uncle Scar. There's always a protagonist and someone that gets in the way of what they want. It's another example of something about this movie that I think's been majorly slept on throughout our childhood. Goofy is technically the villain of his own movie. This is manufactured even more through Pete and his ideology to keep Max under his thumb. It's not entirely Goofy's fault, as his perception of his son is constantly being influenced by outsiders. Even the principal at Max's school radically states that Max is headed to the electric chair
Before he ends up in the electric chair. The electric chair?
because of his bad behavior. But this is one of the brighter moments of the movie where music is once again used to get us, the viewers, to understand what is desired. 33 minutes into the movie is this scene, and we've already seen about 4 musical breaks, averaging more than 1 musical break every 10 minutes. After Lester's Possum Park, 33 minutes into the movie, 4 musical breaks, break. No music until the 59-minute mark. This massive gap allows the natural building of tension from Max and Goofy's decision-making to be felt in its entirety. We get their first fight in the rain, the perfect cast, high dad soup, Max changes the map, followed by one of the most stressful scenes of my entire childhood. Now pay attention to the audio of this scene's transition. It fades in the next scene with nothing but the purring of their car's engine and some cricket ambiance, then escalating into the white-knuckled seat-gripping left or right decision. All of the heavy-hitting scenes are displayed with silence. After smothering us with song after song, we're left in a musicless breather, leaving us wanting more. There's a scene in Mulan where they're singing A Girl Worth Fighting For, but it cuts mid-song to show the destruction of a war-torn village.
A girl worth fighting.
Another example of this that I love is at the end of Goblet of Fire when Harry finally escapes the Triwizard Tournament. The crowd celebrating, but they don't know the horrors that Harry has gone through. Though not as dramatic, that's a drastic parallel of what the director was executing with these musical commitments. The contrast of playful expositional music to the immediate lack thereof. Shit just got real moment. Except Lima capitalized on that feeling and filled the gap to the brim with climactic tension and important father-son push and pull. I think this break is why I never realized it was a musical to begin with. Just again, looking back, it's been a decade since I probably last watched it. All of these Tarantino-like, well-crafted moments that I've held fondly in memory for 20 years were done without the music. Who would have expected that from the Goof Troop movie? That being said, it's one of the only Disney movies that holds up as a true 90s period piece. Just looking at the way the characters are dressed and the R&B, rock fusion, pop anthem style of music, it's easy to tell what decade it's representing. It's a directorial debut released during a difficult year amongst an otherwise tranquil decade. A Goofy movie was a movie about a simple-minded father and son and their relationship going forward through growing pains, healing them by getting away. It wasn't nominated for any Academy Awards or Golden Globes, but the funny thing is, the Academy Award that did go for Best Picture that same exact year, a movie based around a simple-minded man who falls in love and heals himself by running away from everything, metaphorically and literally. Released during a year where anybody would pay for things to revert back to normality, or, at the very least, pay to get away from it all. And even though only one of them got the credit it deserved, I think both movies nailed it. Thanks for watching.